What can other countries learn from Sweden's success in cutting smoking rates through harm reduction?
I think they need to learn that nicotine isn't the problem. Sweden, I think, recognises that. And I think it's from their past where they historically have used snus for over 200 years. So they recognise that snus offers benefits that smoking doesn't. So their smoking rates have gone down and down and down. Their cancer rates have gone down and down and down. And they recognise that you can still use nicotine without causing the harm that smoking causes. So I think they recognise that probably uniquely in the European Union. And unfortunately, others in the European Union have got this attitude that nicotine is the problem, where it's not. It's the smoking that's the problem.
Why are nicotine pouches facing growing regulatory pressure despite being smoking-free alternatives?
The best thing they can do is just regulate the products as they would any other age-gated product, like alcohol or marijuana or whatever, and just stop children using them that way. Because if you use prohibition, it's not going to work. It's just going to increase illicit trade. It's going to increase the unintended consequences and workarounds and criminal enterprises. So it has to be down to regulation. It has to be down to sensible regulation of nicotine and recognising that nicotine is not the problem, that smoking is the problem. I think a lot of policymakers just don't get that. They conflate smoking and nicotine use, which is the same thing, which it's not. And they need really to look at the evidence. People need to just, especially advocates, need to just keep telling them what the evidence is. The science is all undebatable. Basically, the issue is over. We know that nicotine is far less harmful. So we just need to get policymakers to recognise that, which they're not at the moment.
How can harm reduction voices be better heard in the international policy discussions?
In the UK, we did a consultation on a new tobacco and vapes bill going through, and they didn't call for any consumer groups at all. They didn't have any evidence from them or industries. And a lot of these people from a position of ignorance. So I always say to consumers and advocates, they've just got to keep messaging their elected representatives, if you have them, or whichever way you do in your country, just get the message across to your administrators and policymakers and say, look, we're here, we're benefiting from these products, and you know, your policies, if you are banning safer products, are wrong. And they're going to cause harm rather than reduce harm, which is the idea of harm reduction with nicotine taking over from smoking. It's really the irresponsibility of the WHO in that regard, because they're passing incorrect messaging on to these lower middle income countries. And 80% of the world's smokers live in lower middle income countries. So they need to be educated properly, and we need a global authority like the WHO to be educating those countries better than they are at the moment, and they need to improve their game. With a lot of talk about reform of the WHO recently, because they lost a lot of funding, well, that's one thing they can reform. They can reform their messaging to lower middle income countries, so they install better policies than they're currently doing, and so that's where the WHO needs to educate these countries, and we can only hope that will happen in the future.
So do you think it's a long-term plan?
Everything's long-term. Politics is a long game. You know, you don't get things happen overnight. You have to change hearts and minds bit by bit, and hopefully that will happen in time. But it takes persistence. I know people get very tired of it, but unfortunately that's politics. You know, things take a long time to get right.